Welcome to Machine Minds, where technology and humanity meet. I'm your host, Greg Terrusian, founder of Samson Rose, a recruiting and search business focused on the robotics and AI industries. The Machine Minds show is where we dive deep into the intricate world of robotics and artificial intelligence. As a staffing industry leader with a passion for the frontiers of technology, I'm pleased to be bringing you intimate conversations with the founders, investors, and trailblazers who are at the heart of the AI and robotics revolution. In each episode, we dig into their journeys, the applications of the products they're working on, and the breakthroughs that are shaping our future. Join us as we explore how these machine minds are transforming the way we live, work, and understand our world. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a tech enthusiast, or just curious about this amazing field, you'll learn something new with each episode. Let's delve into the extraordinary. Let's delve into machine minds. Hello and welcome to Machine Minds. I'm your host, Greg Terrusian, founder of Samson Rose, your robotics talent search partner. And on today's episode, I'm joined by Michael Morin, CEO of Boardwalk Robotics. Thanks for being on the show today, Michael.
Greg, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Let's jump into it. So, Michael, can you start by telling us about your career path, which has been really interesting, leading up to your current role as CEO of Boardwalk Robotics?
Sure, absolutely. So I've been in the robotics space since 2007, electrical engineer by training, but a terrible one. I jumped right into kind of the manufacturing side of the house. That went from overseeing manufacturing, supply chain, inventory. That got me into ERP systems, finance. But the part I really loved, really attached myself to, was the commercialization of the technology, really taking stuff from idea stage through commercialization scale up. So I spent a lot of the time on the business development side of the house, in selling robots to basically large companies.
That's awesome. So it sounds like all of that was like a proper foundation to be a CEO, because you touch multiple areas along the way. And the types of companies, were they startups? Were they more established, or was it like the whole gamut?
They've all been startup spaces. I did a few MIT spin-off companies up in Boston.
Nice.
I did a Tampa company that was that needed a reorg and restructuring the commercial side of the house. And then, I got a little bit of experience helping some accelerators out and investment banking as well.
Awesome. Yeah. When I help companies or VCs looking for CEOs, it's kind of like the purple squirrel profile, right? We need someone who really understands the technology, who has that foundation, but understands commercialization, understands fundraising, team building, turnarounds. And it's like, there's not many of those people around there, especially at the stage you want.
I was really fortunate that the first company I was at was growing. I was able to jump in a lot of different roles. So
Yeah.
I got to touch a lot of different areas. It was very fortunate enough to have a great first boss who put a lot of trust in me.
Love that. I always tell people that a year, 2 years in a startup is like 5 to 10 in other companies, right? And for those reasons, if they're growing, it sounds so cliche. I always say it, like, if you're wearing many hats, you have to wear multiple hats and you have to like roll up your sleeves and get involved. But it's true, right? In a startup, if you are close to the leadership, if you're aware of what's going on, that is the ideal place to do almost your own rotational program and make your role what you want to make it.
100%. I mean, it's the quickest way to get noticed. I started off essentially building the robots and worked my way up to COO. So there's no other spot you can do that.
Yeah, so true. So let's talk about Boardwalk Robotics. Can you talk us through like the founding story of the company and what inspired this to kind of be born? Were there any like specific problems or opportunities that the team saw in the market?
Yeah, so the founders were certainly ahead of their time. Boardwalk was established in 2017, where they were commercializing Nadia, the predecessor to Alex, which we'll get into later, which was a hydraulic humanoid. So there wasn't, it wasn't a traditional way where they worked backwards from customer needs. They were supporting an SBIR. that effort of kind of putting the customer first and working backwards didn't get put in until just around 3 years ago.
Interesting. So is that kind of like more the R&D focus, you'd say, that they had? Just like, hey, let's see what we can do with this technology and then go to market?
Yeah, I think it was, you see some of these companies, there's two different ways to do it, right? Maybe the traditional way is you kind of got an idea, you prove it out, you raise some venture money, and you start sprinting. Boardwalk took kind of the SBIR approach, which was it's a little bit slower, more organic growth, and it worked out great. I think the trick with leveraging non-dilutive funding like SBIR is that trying to get those grants, those research funds to align with the commercial pathway. Boardwalk's been able to do that in a pretty strong way.
That's pretty rare, isn't it? Right? There's normally a disconnect there from the research side or even academia into that commercial world.
It's a tricky path. It's a tricky toe to line. You can quickly get swallowed up in bidding proposal and chasing after these things and going for things outside your comfort zone. But we've done a great job with keeping it pretty focused
Yeah.
in. We got a strong team of PhDs who really know how to write these things.
That's amazing. So you mentioned Alex. You guys recently launched, and congratulations. Some of the videos, if people haven't seen, just check out their website. We'll link all of this in the show notes anyway, but go and have a look at Alex and in action, basically. So you're out of stealth mode, we talked about offline. So Alex is a humanoid robot designed for manufacturing, logistics, maintenance, etc. But can you tell us more about the development process, the unique capabilities of Alex? And obviously it's different to other quote unquote humanoids on the market. So I'd like to get like more of a under the hood look at this.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the ground up, we really focused on advanced manipulation. In order to do that, a strong effort was put into the actuation, our AI models, our data collection side of the house, and ultimately our control software and removing unwanted characteristics out of motors. So we found that talking to customers, this advanced manipulation side of the house is the toughest thing to solve, that they really needed solved. So we started from the ground up, focused on those things. So there was a lot of discussions on different use cases, and one of the things that came out of it was we wanted to really be agnostic and have a lot of optionality in two spaces. We're certainly a legged robotic company, but the lower body, we wanted the option to have AMR on a pedestal and legs.
Interesting.
And I'll get into why customers find that important. And the second piece was the end effector. I don't know that 5-finger grippers are the best suited for all these tasks. So we have an assortment of grippers, and we have some quick tool changers that actually go on the wrist to quickly switch between different gripping options.
Yeah.
And where if we want to attach a screwdriver or whatever it may be to the end effector, then we support the customer in that way.
Yeah. I mean, it makes you think, and I've had the conversation a few times, like, is that the right format, or is that the right, like, I guess format's the right way of thinking about it, like needed for whatever you want to do, because you can reimagine whatever you want it to do. And like you're saying, if you want to attach a screwdriver to there or a drill bit or whatever and have it do that job, and then like, all right, we're going to switch to this other production method or this other task, like let's just switch that out. That's pretty genius.
And I don't know where it's going, but right now it makes the most sense. And again, we think about the customer first and kind of how they're thinking about it, any ways we can support them.
You're removing a lot of complexity as well. Like if you're trying to build a human hand, even from like the haptic side of things or whatever it is, it's tough. It's really tough. I think that's been one of the toughest things for companies to actually develop.
I mean, people have been trying to do complex grippers for 20 plus years, and
Yeah.
from tendon driven to all these different types of drives. And I don't know anyone that's been kind of super successful with a 5 finger gripper. It's a really hard problem to solve.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Everyone says the same thing. And companies get so excited when they're like, "Oh, we built a new hand." But it's like,
Yeah.
how many have you done? So you guys you obviously got this strong focus, advanced manipulation and AI-driven robotics. How can you dive into like some of those key technologies that power Alex and how you worked with IHMC to influence the development?
Yeah. So yeah, I can dive into some of the things. I mean, I think our actuators themselves are best in class. I'll tell you kind of maybe a quick funny story. We had
Yeah,
a multinational and who was evaluating all the humanoids in the space, and me and the CTO Brandon Shrewsbury were in a room with him, and uh, he said, "How did you get your robotic movements so smooth? It's the smoothest I've seen." And just a single tear rolled down Brandon's eye. I think I stood by this. So,
so proud.
so the actuators and the software that ties it in, and the AI models that's really what we're focused on as a whole. As far as IHMC, they've been great partners. We've co-developed some of the technology with them. They're very focused on like the bleeding edge research, and we're very focused on the commercialization side of the house. So, but that's a long partnership that we we plan to continue to work with them very closely. It doesn't hurt that they're right in our backyard too, and just a few blocks away. They got a beautiful facility and built out another building, and they're
Nice,
great guys.
nice. So remind me, where are you guys headquartered and where's the team? Are you all in
Yeah,
one place?
yeah. So it's a little unusual. So we are in
Yeah,
Pensacola, Florida, which is not necessarily known for robotics, but it's certainly a lot of legged locomotion came out of that. I mean, you got
really.
Boston Dynamics and a lot of the other humanoids kind of were birthed there at IHMC. So there's a deep history with that. Um, as
You're
far
clearly
as
not from Florida yourself.
yeah, no, I got a trashy Boston accent, and that brings me to kind of probably where we end up expanding out. We are doing some growing right now and a lot of hiring. So there is a desire. We'll always have some roots down in Pensacola, keep a satellite office, but we are exploring some facilities up in the Boston area to be able to
Nice.
pull from the talent pool up here.
Yeah. It's a hard one. You're trying to like reinvent the wheel, if people are all in Boston and the Bay Area and stuff like that, and you want to try and pull people somewhere else. If they're not in that research world, it's tough. Yeah.
It's very tricky. I think there's I, I think there's some good news with that, right? That there is some people leaving the West Coast for sure. But it's always tricky, right? You got Pittsburgh, Boston, Silicon Valley, really,
Yeah.
and Austin's up and coming on the robotics side of the house. But um, for me, Boston, I was very fortunate enough to be attached with so many talented engineers up there who are in that area and have made it their home and have families there. So um, it's advantageous for Boardwalk to be there. I can turn on a lot of talented people who've, researchers are great, but you really need those people who have experience bringing robot or complex technology to market, going through
Yeah.
the mockings, going through V&V and the complex testing to really solidify the design. So
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. And it's a beautiful city as well. If people are going to leave, the Bay Area, leave California.
it's great. It's got a rich history. You got Cape Cod and the beaches here. You got the mountains an hour north. So there's
Yeah.
and the city's great, and it's not. too crowded like New York, for example. So I'm a little
Every time
biased.
I visit, I like fall a little bit more in love with Boston because it also reminds me a lot of England, obviously, like
Yes. Yeah.
architecture, even the climate and stuff like that. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great place, and the neighborhoods are um, they're great to live in. Very easy to get around, and so
Yeah.
great food.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true. So, the humanoid space, I don't want to say it's saturated, right? It's like it's the next hype, right? We've seen a lot of eyeballs come into the market because of AI. There's been tons of investment there, and then now it's trickling into humanoids as certain companies like it's a lot of buzz, right?
Mhm.
And you guys have done such a good job of keeping quiet, even though you've been working behind the scenes. I know we've known each other a while now. I know you
Yeah.
guys have been working behind the scenes, like really quietly, cranking out all of this stuff, and then now you're finally releasing videos and starting to talk a little bit more freely about what you've been doing. Apart from the right now, you haven't done the lower part or displaying your lower part of the robot. What else do you believe like differentiates Boardwalk from some of the other players in the market?
Yeah, no, I think some of the stuff I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, but you know, it's this is tricky, right? This comes up when you're raising capital, and there's
Yeah,
1,000 humanoids out there, right? And um, how are you different than every single one? And it's always a tricky answer. But I think honestly, I don't want to go after AGI things, and I just very focused on customer needs, the actuation stuff, and really sets us up for some of the advanced manipulation stuff. As
yeah,
far as you go into a commercial pilot, and it's the same thing, right? They set you up with an easy task, and then it gets more and more complex on how you roll it out. So I think for a lot of the humanoids out there, they're completing that first task, and they're going to get caught up on as the tasks get harder and harder to do. So I think we're going to
yeah,
stand out there. Um, I mean, there's other pieces too, like our software stack, our whole body controller is best in class. So we've this software has brought up I think 7 or 8 humanoids, so we can iterate faster than other people and spin our design around pretty quickly. So
awesome.
those are some of the key things. Some of the stuff I got to keep a little close to the vest right now.
Of course, yeah. It's a cheeky question to ask, to be fair, because I'm not investing,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's always interesting to see what you can share. But you mentioned that, the basically your pilots, right? Putting them out there. I know that Alex is currently being piloted in aviation. Can you share some more insights or success stories from some of these pilots or what you guys have like in the pipeline now?
yeah, absolutely. So we've been talking with this aviation part. We'll be giving an announcement pretty soon. It's going to kick off, I believe, in 6 weeks and some change. Um, we were so fortunate enough to have a partner who needed little education on kind of where humanoids was as a whole, and how it could be applied. We sat down, we had we talked over some pain points and some focus areas, and what best we could tackle first to get some early wins and then start expanding out. So we got a great partner who's looking at a multi-year contract in units, but we're going to start pretty simple. We have a sanding application, and if you know sanding, if you've ever walked in any of these facilities, but it's this room. They move these wings in there. You're wearing a bunny suit where they're pumping fresh air in. Um, and it's a very uncomfortable job. They only allow people to actually sand for 3.5 hours. Um,
Oh, really?
and if you watch people sand, if you've ever sanded your back porch or anything like that, you're holding a vibrating orbital sander. It's a
Yeah,
very uncomfortable thing. So every few minutes, they're letting the hand off to do one of these, like
yeah,
and sweep the hand around, or to peel the tape off. So it's it's a perfect job for a humanoid, right? You're in an area where it's a toxic environment where it's very uncomfortable for humans to be in there. People come out of there with a lot of pain. So that's a perfect first use case for us, and we're excited to
Yeah.
be kicking that off soon.
I honestly couldn't think of a better one, to be fair, because I have definitely sanded and it is not enjoyable. And then you've got that weird numbing, vibrating feeling afterwards
Yeah.
for a while. So yeah.
And it's a tricky one too. I mean, you don't want to sand too much, and you don't want to sand too little. And
Consistency,
there's
yeah.
certain sections where you can't. It's a perfect use case for us. So more news on that, and we'll be kicking that off in November, and super excited to announce the partner and a little bit more detail later.
Awesome. Well, jumping ahead, what impact do you hope Alex or even Boardwalk, because obviously Alex is the first now commercially going into these pilots and stuff like that, but I'm sure it's only part of your vision for the future and automation in the industrial industries. What kind of impact do you hope to have in the long run in these spaces?
Yeah, so I mean, I love the manufacturing stuff, given my background, and I've set up a bunch of different robotic lines, so I've always loved removing variants from those things and getting a consistent output. Um, but bigger picture outside of manufacturing is, I think, especially our technology, where you kind of have um, extremely backdrivable joints, and I think it actually plays really well in the home. I'm from I have some experience commercializing rehabilitation robots, and it's a sad state of affairs in the U.S. with the healthcare system. Right, somebody has
Yeah.
1 in 6 people get a stroke, and
Wow, is it that high? I didn't know
it's
that.
it's a crazy sad number.
Wow.
And you know how it works. It affects one side of your brain, and the only way to regain upper extremity or lower extremity movement is through intensive rehab. And what ends up happening is somebody gets a stroke, they go to the hospital, uh, the hospital gets a lump sum payment, and we have a private healthcare system. So what do? They try to squeeze their costs. They either push that patient out to a skilled nursing facility, or they push them to the home, um, depending on the state of the patient and everything. So there's a
Oh,
massive push to push patients to the home, and ultimately they need a caretaker. So you can envision loved ones wanting to maybe remote into these systems to check on people, to help with assistance, and even general, like even on the clinician side, patient monitoring, transfer assists, and then gamifying the rehabilitation side.
yeah.
So I think there's a massive opportunity to um, really push for that, and we it's not like we've had some early conversations with people, clinicians, and talking about how that works in, but this is an effort that I think we're going to start putting in down the road.
Amazing. I didn't see that coming. That's great. And I know some of, your background in the space. So that would be huge to see because it's such a problem area. And it's like, I don't think anyone is solving it right now successfully. Right?
I
Yeah,
think there's certainly people doing a great job
great
with
job.
some
Yeah.
demonstrations in the home, and 1X just made an announcement, and a few other companies. But uh, rehab's it's like the forgotten stepchild of medicine, and
Yeah.
the reimbursements are horrible, and these hospitals, they can't afford equipment like this. So um, but I really feel that if you have a humanoid that can be performing a lot of different tasks, and you can get the cost of goods down to the equivalent to a car, then it's a no brainer for people.
Yeah. It always comes down to the cost and who's going to front that bill because the tech's there. It's especially when it's just like pure rehab or pure like aged care, whatever, it's who is covering? Is it an insurance thing? Is it the facility? Is it who's holding that cost?
Exactly, and it's the road to get a HCPCS code is a 10-year one, and you need a
Wow.
massive amount of clinical data in order to get it. Um, and it also opens up the floodgates for all the competitors of your hard work. So it's always a tricky
Yeah,
one. But yeah, I think initially it's there's always clever things you can do on the financing side for private sales on this stuff, and I think there's a great market for it.
for sure. Let's shift gears because you started talking about your team, PhDs, doing some awesome stuff, that you're going to do more hiring in the Boston area, looking at a place. Let's talk about hiring and team members for a moment.
Sure.
Obviously, very close to me, close to
Yeah.
my heart in the recruiting world. As a leader, how important is it for you to hire the right team members when developing cutting edge tech like humanoid robots for the next stage, right? You guys have already got it to this point. You've done the R&D side. You've got your partnerships with IHMC. Now to scale.
Oh, I mean, it's the most important part. Our people are the reason why we were able to work with such a small team and get so far on the development side of the house. Each one of them is doing 3 jobs. They're all very multidisciplined. Um, as far as the next stage is, it's absolutely critical. It's something that we spend a lot of time on. We take the process very seriously. I mean, I think this is maybe how we started chatting initially, but so you don't have the option for mistakes, right? If you
Yeah,
hire the wrong person and they they don't quite understand what it takes on the development cycle, and that goes into your project plan, and then you're off on milestones, you're in massive trouble.
yeah,
You got customers mad at you. You have all these things. So it's all the people that are going to make this happen. And there's a lot of companies out there going after the same talent. So it's definitely something we spend a ton of time on and think about every day.
yeah. You really need to. You have to be so intentional with it, especially at this stage. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's a good point to just like reiterate, if you do hire the wrong people, and it happens sometimes, you can only be so thorough, especially if you're trying to do it all yourself and you're spread thin, etc. How that impacts the business and the timeline, the culture, milestones, everything like that, it can have a ripple effect on. But one thing that I wanted to mention as well is at the stage that you are at, and then, normally early stage startup, you also don't micromanage people. You can't. So you're trying to hire people that are capable, that you can trust, that can work autonomously, that, have some level of success under their belt. So if they are the wrong hire, sometimes you don't know until it's too late because you haven't been like reviewing everything or holding their hand or sitting there. And then that can also be like even more detrimental. So you've got to be super intentional.
100%. And I've played adult babysitter in the past, and there's no time for that here. We've we it's very tempting when you come to a challenging problem to just throw a director at it or get in some experience. But we've been very intentional with keeping our org extremely flat and not hiring a bunch of directors, really focusing in on the individual contributors and making
Yeah.
sure the communication is pretty streamlined on that side of the house. Now, inevitably, it grows up, and you need those layers, right? But um, we've been doing an excellent job, and it's really a big thanks to the CTO and Brandon Shrewsbury and a few other key people who um, even though they may not officially have the title, um, they're keeping people organized and on track and bringing up um, bringing up things that could jeopardize the timeline. We're not
Yeah.
Boardwalk is not at a point where we have this resource loaded timeline and a brick falls out of the wall and you shove another brick back in. I always equate a startup to a stone wall, right? And you put if a stone falls out, right? It might take a few, a big stone falls out, like let's say a person is the analogy here, that um, you might not know how big that stone is or how much it was holding up the wall. And it could take you three more little stones to fill that, to get
Yeah.
that wall back up and going. And I fell victim to that early on in my management career. And yeah, some of these people, they're doing 5 jobs, and it's now
And you're not
it's important.
aware.
Yeah, yeah, it's important to incentivize those individuals, and making sure they're challenged and finding out what motivates them. So
Yeah.
it's a tricky one to juggle, right?
I love that analogy. Yeah, it's so true. And I think that that's the biggest part. Like, you don't know what it's going to take you to replace that until it's gone.
Yeah,
So that one person, that if they've got the right mindset, way of working in a startup, and they've been there, maybe, like we said, it's the timelines are very different. Them being there for a year is probably like them being for 3 or somewhere else. So they might have taken on so much time, so many tasks and so many things in that year, because it's an accelerated timeline. You've grown a lot in that time. There's a ton of knowledge loss, and then responsibilities and duties lost with that one person, and then you're not aware of it until afterwards. And you're like, oh crap, no
yeah.
wonder.
You're dead on. I mean, it's not like we aren't doing anything easy in humanoids, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot. It's not like you can go crack open the quality system, and if somebody walks and kind of reproduce what they were doing, and
yeah,
documentation everywhere and that sort of thing. So it's just not the space we're playing in, but that's what makes it
true.
exciting. And yeah, Boardwalk, we are so fortunate to have such great people.
That's awesome. What qualities do you look for in candidates to make sure they align with your mission and values and way of working?
The values and like the culture standpoint, that's always like kind of the same questions, but I really structure my interview questions really dependent on the role. I'm from the operations side of the house, so there's a certain personality type. You've got to be a little bit of a glutton for punishment on that side of the house, and
Yeah,
you have to have thick skin, and things go wrong, and you're trying to hit customer deadlines and late hours and things like that. But one key question I always ask is, to if somebody has a background from a big company, um, there's there's key questions I ask to make sure that there's no job too small, or I just focus on this side of the house, or I just write this piece of code. We're one family here, and there's if somebody needs help, people pitch in, and they drop their stuff to go catch somebody else up, and that's a huge characteristic that we certainly look for, and it has served me well in the past. I find it really rewarding bringing junior people up who, whenever I get the opportunity, I try to steer people away from people management if they think they want to go down that way, because it's it's not. I think people have this idea in their head, kind of what that means, and
yeah,
they just point people in certain directions. It's like it's just not true. Your your regular tasks don't really quite go away, and it's an added burden. But yeah, I mean, I think from the beginning, it's really important to understand people's career paths and needs and desires. I think that starts at the interviewing stage. If you're having that conversation like 6 months in, it's too late.
yeah, yeah. So true. And something that you mentioned there about they're willing to like put down their work and go and help other people because that's what's needed. I put a video out recently just about like the 3 things that I look for when I'm hiring for robotic startups, and that was one of them actually, because you kind of have to be selfless and understand like the bigger picture and what you're getting yourself in for. You have to be adaptable, you have to be willing to learn or bend, whether it's your timeline or what you've been hired for. You might be hired as a machine learning engineer or reinforcement learning engineer, but you need to do some infrastructure stuff this week or next week. Hey, it's just what it is. Like, we don't have a DevOps person on board.
Yeah.
Get involved. So if some people have like I want to say ego, but like not the right mentality for that type of stage of company or type of work, and you need to vet that out early on.
100%. It's got to be exciting for them, right? I've worked at 7-person companies and I've worked at 200-person companies, and everywhere in between is extremely different. But to me, this is a really exciting stage, because if you can find people who find interest in all these different challenges and where they could learn and grow, then those are the people we tend to gravitate towards.
Yeah, for sure. So the robotics industry, it often faces, more from the outside of the robotics industry, but people like have this negative view sometimes, criticism, whether it's all about job displacement. There could be safety concerns. Obviously, we talked about robots in the home here for a second. How do you address those kind of challenges, and what steps does Boardwalk take to mitigate like potential downside of automation?
I don't know how focused we are on that. To be honest, from like as far as like displacing jobs and things like that, you know, there's plenty of people who kind of talked about this, and you go on to do bigger and better things, right? The great news on the space we're at right now is that there's massive companies trying to get ahead of this labor shortage, and it's real. I mean, I could walk into a facility and somebody's moving at a snail's pace, and oh, that person doesn't seem in any rush. What gives? Talking to the person giving me the tour. Well, I'm short 180 people, and they know it, so they're in absolutely no rush to. They know I'm not going to fire them. So
Wow, I never thought about it that way. Yeah,
yeah. So it's
job security.
yeah. But I think as we start advancing as a society, and right, we go through these ebbs and flows. It's like the grocery stores with the automated scanners and things like that. It's another one of these, and we feel that people should be alongside these humans. Humans are still the boss, and it should be a tool. It should be a tool being used.
Yeah, I think you're echoing what I always ask the question, just like to see what people's perspective are, or more recently, shall I say, ask the question, because it's something that comes up a lot when, naysayers and stuff like that. Obviously, I'm in the industry, I see the benefit, I know the facts, but the labor shortage is so real in all of these industries, whether it's food tech, ag tech, logistics, manufacturing. It's just there, and less and less people want to do the jobs, and companies are getting more and more demand for parts or deliveries or whatever it is. So when people say, that, they're going to take jobs, it's like, well, no one's doing them anyway. No one's doing the job. And then the jobs that they might be helping with, like here, that with the sanding one, it's like, no one should be doing that job. Like, you shouldn't need to have a human doing it in this day and age.
100%. And I mean, we have an aging population here. People they're gonna get into the points where they can't work anymore, and companies are losing revenue if they can't get these tasks done. So it's
100%.
It's a great time to be in the space.
Yeah. What excites you most about the future for robotics and AI?
Oh, for me, it's all the applications that come out of it. It's something new is getting applied every time. You look at things like, I mean, I think we were at I met a few of the guys at Robotic Invest when we were there, and this guy had a makeup robot, and it just shot on makeup.
I remember that one.
We chatted with him for a little bit, and I was like, it's little things like that where you don't think. I don't know if you necessarily call it robotics or not, but it's these applications that these brilliant people come up with that to apply the technology. And a lot of the stuff you think that's way out, and that's way out there, and who would go after that market? And sure enough, I mean, we were exploring. I mean, this was in 2008 or 9, way back when, but we were exploring a few different applications. There was a robot massaging your back, like playing masseuse, right, giving you a back massage and things like that, and investors were like, "There's no way to apply it. What are you crazy?" And but now you got these companies that are specialized in it, and they're doing an
Yeah.
excellent job at commercializing these things. And I mean, we were doing early stuff on like teleoperation stuff and force feedback, and we were talking to hospitals that were trying to actually push labor overseas to help the hospital save and do some echo scan stuff. I always thought that those were just way out there, but it's so exciting. I love popping open LinkedIn and seeing a new thing, a new way
Yeah,
to apply robotics and AI. It's an exciting time.
it
I mean,
is.
a scary time too.
Yeah, a lot of people think that for sure. Yeah, it is exciting because you see so many things that you never even thought about or commercializing, but also now the adoption is starting to become more frequent. Like some of those adoption and also interest from the investor side and the commercialization side, but some of these industries that were less or more hesitant to adopt technology beforehand and now seeing the benefits. And then the general public, like these massage ones, you're seeing them pop up and things like that, and people are like, oh, I'll give it a try, why not? um yeah, yeah, interesting for
But
sure.
it's still, I love going to customer sites, and it's always interesting. It's never what you expect, right? When you kind of get on, and until you're walking the floor and you're asking questions and understanding pain points. It's there's just been, I don't know, there's been just interesting customer needs on this side, and
Yeah,
that's the part that's really exciting.
yeah, you really need to be on site and see what they're dealing with. Sometimes they're not even aware. You can see a problem that you can solve that they never even knew, but you would never know unless you're there or
Yeah,
speaking to them and doing like your intake.
and vice versa too. It's like things that I didn't think where humanoids could be applied to, and I'll walk the floor with Brandon or another engineer, and they're like, oh, that's an excellent fit for our technology too. Their
Really?
eyes light up, so it's always an exciting time. Um, and these plants they aren't always in exciting areas. You're in Nebraska and Detroit, like all these interesting places. So you really got to love it to
Yeah.
fly to these remote places and rent a car and drive 3 hours to talk to these people. So I do love it.
Love that. Well, look, lastly, what advice would you give to aspiring leaders or entrepreneurs looking to enter the robotics space right now? Any key lessons you've learned along your journey?
Yeah, don't do it. Hardware's hard. Go start a SaaS company. No, no. See, honestly, before you form an entity, you start buying business cards, you start getting a website. Go talk to the customers. Go figure out the customer's needs. Speak to people where you think the technology could be getting applied. It's free. You'd be surprised at the people willing to talk to you if you have some skill and um, either cold calling or email outreach, whatever it may be. But it's really got to start there on these gaps, and you can't just talk to a few people. It's got to be hundreds. So you got to really have that grind and a passion to really solve the customer's pain points. But I think it's always tempting to have this cool technology and try to figure out where to apply it. But I think I've never had success on that side of the house. It's always got to start with a customer's needs.
Yeah, that's gold for sure. Yeah. Well, look, thank you so much for being on the show today, Michael. Really enjoyed the chat, and I'm glad we finally got it on. I know we've rescheduled a couple of times, but it's all good. I'm looking forward to catching up in person again soon. Where can the listeners find you, find Boardwalk Robotics, connect, and follow for all the future stuff coming up?
Yeah, check us out on most of our content goes to our LinkedIn page at it's Boardwalk Robotics, and then check out boardwalkrobotics.com. we're cleaning up our marketing. So, Greg, maybe you can help me find a marketing person that can really
Definitely.
help us elevate it. But LinkedIn is where you can find it, and I'm always available. Reach out to me. Pretty responsive on that platform too. So,
Perfect. Well, look, thanks again, and we'll keep in touch.
Greg, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.